don't see anything just yet. All right. All right, we are now. I see it. All right, give us 1 second there, Facebook, as we build up the crowd. You know how it works. Let's see what we got. Are we on the page here? Yeah. Okay. So we're building up the crowd. As we allow the crowd to develop, I'm going to tell you we have a very, very awesome walk and talk show for you today. We have a great guest with us, and the timing to have this gentleman on could not be better. Before I get into introducing him, his name is General Bob Dees. Harlan and I, real quick here, are going to go over some of the news of the day, which we will then, you and I will pick up later in the program when we say
Absolutely.
Farewell to the General.
Yeah.
Coming in today, I heard the interview with President Trump and Maria Bartiromo, who you are always on with.
Sure.
And he was point blank. I want to do health care reform before I do tax reform.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's the right play. If he can get it done, great. And I think our conversation yesterday, I was a little bit more skeptical. But look, this is classic Trump, right? He's not going to take a loss, right? He's going to double down on this, and he's going to get it done through sheer will of force. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
This one, he's going to need a little bit more force than maybe he thinks he has.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to have the easy time that, well, first of all, let me step back. He did not say this is going to be easy by any means.
No, he knows.
But I think that this is going to be far more difficult than he likes. I also have a different strategy on this. You know, I think the taxes should come before the health care.
Yeah.
He made an argument that he would be able to, if he does health care first, he's going to strip out, I think it was an incredible amount of money. Maybe it was something like, I don't want to say 900 billion, but it was something insanely big that then he can turn around and apply that to tax reform.
Yeah.
I think what you're going to wind up seeing is that he is ultimately going to have to do something.
Yep.
He's not going to get the cooperation he exactly needs. And
Yep.
so what we'll and the summer comes and everybody gets sleepy.
Yeah.
I think he's just going to wind up doing a corporate tax break. And you think he's just going to write a pen somehow and do it. But we'll see how that goes. We just heard breaking news more than a couple of minutes ago that...
Yeah, well, you know, the Russians have released a statement to, or the Kremlin has released a statement saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin is meeting U.S. Secretary of State Tillerson and the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov at the Kremlin. So I believe that this is happening right now. This was obviously a meeting that we didn't think was going to happen just 12 hours ago. The Kremlin seemed to have snubbed the United States and our Secretary of State. And you know, during yesterday's program, I put this into context by saying that, you know, they met with Hillary Clinton and John Kerry on many occasions. So this was in many ways unprecedented for them to refuse Tillerson. They obviously reconsidered. I don't know.
Well, for me, and I can't wait to hear what General Dees has to say about this. To me, I've always taken it that Putin is a fake tough guy.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy that if you're in a bar with him and, you know, he's got all of his buddies around and you're by yourself, he'll take off his shirt and he'll do the whole, he'll try to make himself tough. But when all of his buddies are gone and it's you and Putin eye to eye and you say, yeah, let's go, suddenly he whimpers down. That's my take on Putin. You know, you give him the tough guy look and you challenge him and he'll step off his ego a bit. Sure. All right, so with that said, we got nothing else, right?
Yeah, let's go with it.
Okay, so let me tell you a quick story before I introduce General Bob Dees here. About, I don't know, maybe it was a year and a half ago. It was in August. I wound up getting a phone call from a friend of mine who was involved very highly up with the Dr. Ben Carson campaign. And he said to me, hey, listen, there's nobody who knows immigration quite like yourself. I would like you to come and give some advice to Dr. Carson in terms of immigration. I said, sure. I mean, at the time, I was pretty much pro-Trump, but I also liked Ben Carson as well. So I went and I saw when I went in there were some pretty impressive names, pretty impressive people sitting around the table. And I gave my 2 cents plus maybe a couple other bucks to Dr. Carson. And we talked a lot about work permits and what have you. And by the end of that 1 hour session, Dr. Carson came up to me and said, I just want to let you know that the information that you provided me today was the most useful that I have received so far. And I said, wow, thank you very much. And he said, would you please sit next to me during lunch? I said, who am I to say no? So there we are, we sit down for lunch, and as I'm talking to Dr. Carson, we're having a lot of fun. This incredibly handsome man sits to my right. And he says to me, I want to thank you for all you do. And I said, well, thank you very much. And he says, my name is General Bob Dees. I said, no, it should be me who thanks you for what you do. So let me tell you about General Bob Dees, okay? He's retired from the Army. He was the chairman for the Carson campaign for president. He also was a former vice director for the Department of Defense. He was assistant division commander of the 101st Airborne Division, and he was the commander of the 2nd Infantry Division in U.S. Forces Korea. Now, there's other things on this man's resume, but I can't take the full hour just to keep on reading it off. He is a very impressive person, very nice man. And I can't say thank you enough for him giving us the hour today. He's also going to be telling you about some excellent projects he's spearheading as we're going through the conversation. We're going to talk to him about North Korea. We're going to talk to him about Syria. We're going to talk to him about Russia. I want you to send me questions now that you want me to ask General Dees during our conversation. You know how this works. So if you're going to do that, you go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, you hit the submit news. I want you to put at the top General and put your question. Remember, don't make it more than a line. If it's more than one line, I'm going to skip past it because of the amount that we get in. I'll try to get to as many as possible. That being said, Tim, let's bring in General Dees. General, there you are. See, General Dees, I never tell a lie. Look at the handsomeness on this guy. Look at the smile. That dentist, you must pay that dentist a lot of money.
Good to see you, Dennis.
All right, so look, let's get right into it, General Dees. Before we start talking about the 3 situations that are taking place in the world, I do have a couple of questions that I've been dying to ask you since the last time I saw you, okay?
Sure.
President Obama, he was a happy spender. I mean, he ran up our debt, but the one place he seemed to just not want to spend any money was on the military. Can you tell our audience what it is, from your perspective, that President Barack Hussein Obama did to our military, our assets, to morale? You've got the stage. Go ahead.
You bet. Well, the thing that I think I would highlight first is many people tweeted me when President Trump took over, and he gave his first salute off of Air Force One. And his first salute was a crisp military salute, and the military people said, finally, we have a commander-in-chief who not only knows how to salute us, but knows how to respect us, knows how to care for us, and really has our back. And so that's far more important than anything else, is that respect from the commander-in-chief. Secondly, what the commander-in-chief does is so very important. And Obama continued to strip military strength out of the force. And yes, dollars away from munitions, away from equipment maintenance and all that certainly pays a price. But the real price is that when you strip people out of the military, you strip an experienced infantry captain that we've taken 10 years to train. That infantry captain is not replaced overnight. They're put out on their ear. Some of them got pink slips in Iraq while they were fighting. And that is a tremendous morale crunch. And as well, you can't just in weeks, months, even years replace the people you've let off. So it's going to take a concerted effort of much greater resourcing, much greater emphasis, and good leadership and training of our military personnel to get back to where we were before Obama had his negative impact on our armed forces.
All right, so then let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions with that. Number one is, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, the military is sort of designed so this way we would be able to fight 2 wars at one time. So question number one is, are we prepared to do that? Because in some cases, people would say, hey, that's what it's starting to look like here again. And if it doesn't even happen right now, if it did happen in the future, are we robust enough at this very point in time to be able to fight 2 wars at one time? And then number two is President Trump has put forward a $54 billion proposal in his new budget to strengthen the military. So I would like to know, I mean, you can tie question 1 into question 2 if it fits. I would like to know from your perspective, from your expertise, what you would like, if he were to get that $54 billion exactly as he wants it, how would you like to see that spending go first? Where do you want to see things built?
You bet. Well, the first one, you allude to what's called in the military vernacular the major regional conflict, MRC, and the U.S. strategy until midway through the Obama years was to be able to fight 2 MRCs at once, major regional conflicts, such as the Mideast and Korea simultaneously. Even then, with a robust military, you have to rob Peter to pay Paul, and you're always bleeding assets. Some are called dual apportioned assets that go either to one or the other, but they can't go to both. So it's always been a little precarious, but now that the Obama administration has had their impact, they actually went away from a 2 MRC strategy, and it was 1 MRC and then 1 regional contingency. So over time, they reduced our defense requirements and as a way to justify further drawdown of the defense. If we were to fight today in both 2 major regional conflicts, frankly, I think we would have a tough time. I never want to diminish the will of our military and their ability to do things that are almost supernatural, but we have ridden them hard. We've put them away wet. We have a serious depletion of readiness, of personnel, of resources, and I think we are at great risk. Hopefully, and I know you subscribe to this, there's a maxim that says peace through strength. By Donald Trump drawing a red line in Syria, by President Trump giving a very certain warning to the North Koreans and to China, this diminishes the likelihood that we will have to fight 2 simultaneous wars on different sides of the globe. Well, very tough prospect.
I know.
Secondly, on the budget question you asked, $54 billion is a good start. It's going to take a sustained investment of that and then even greater increases for the next decade. You also have to consider absorption rate. How fast can the military absorb this new influx of resources? And I think $54 billion is a good start, but that ought to be a start, not the end of what we do to reinvest in our forces.
Before, Harlan's going to ask you some specific questions about what's taking place right now in Syria and North Korea with us moving assets into that region. But before we get there, because I always like to let our audience builds up over the course of time, so I want to save some of that for a little bit. And I also have several very important questions that are near and dear to my heart. You know, when I was growing up, General, when I was a little boy, I remember all the time asking for at Christmas time or my birthday, please, buy me a G.I. Joe. A G.I. Joe. I mean, there was something about the military. There was something about just the way that America carried itself back in that day, where the heroes were, the Marines and the men of the Army and soldiers. And now today it seems like, our heroes are Beyonce and whoever can, find the fanciest car and come up with the greatest rap song or some garbage like that. And and maybe it's just me, maybe it's because my dad is a 1-9 Marine, but I feel as if there has been a lack of respect to a certain degree on a national level when it comes to the men and women of uniform in this country. I just don't feel that they get the honor and the respect that they deserve. I ask you 2-part question. Number 1, do you agree with me? And if you don't, please tell me why. And number 2, if you do agree with me, do you believe it comes from the top? Do you believe that President Trump, in showing love and admiration and respect for the military, can get that back to the day where the little boy and the little girl asks for a G.I. Joe versus maybe, a Beyonce doll?
Yeah, well, let me take it from a broad perspective. First, specifically on your questions, I agree that we don't respect the military as we should, although I think it is at the top. It is with leadership. Leadership makes a difference. The American people in the heartland of America still love our military. They have the military uncles and fathers and grandfathers, and they recognize the great sacrifice. And we've seen outpouring for our wounded warriors in many ways. So I think it starts at the top, and I think it started with Obama. President Trump's, just the second he took over, as I alluded to earlier, has made a huge difference in the esteem, and in everybody else is following the president's example, even to even greater degrees, stepping up and honoring the military. I got into some of my resilience work because I was concerned about the military suicide dynamic. And I saw 22 veterans a day, and I saw one active duty a day that were ending their lives unnecessarily. And so the net result is that I got into this thing about resilience. How do we look at and prepare for the storms of life? We all get those storms, to include in combat and our veterans. How do we weather those storms? And then after the fact, how do we bounce back without getting stuck in those toxic emotions of guilt, false guilt, anger, bitterness, post-traumatic stress, and everything else that our veterans have experienced of recent? And then how do we learn and adapt from that life experience and get better, stronger, wiser? That's the example of our GIs over the entire course of our nation. That's the example of some of our heroes, Rocky on the movies instead of Beyonce, as you mentioned. That gets me, Dennis, to I have a real passion for American resilience. After Hillary was defeated, there were people mourning in the streets and college students running to their safe rooms and petting their puppies. I just think we are very misled, and it struck me that 70 years prior, that same age group in America were the same people going over the beaches of Normandy, fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. And so my concern is that we've lost some of America's true grit. We've lost perspective. We've lost resilience. And so I'm committed to trying to help regain that by education, training, highlighting the right heroes. I call them profiles in resilience. John F. Kennedy called them profiles in courage, slightly different twist, profiles in resilience. These are people that have taken a licking and they keep on ticking. They've lost both legs. They've lost a son to suicide. They've gone through a just very difficult divorce and unraveling of a family. They've gone through a diagnosis of cancer. All these people that I'm interviewing as we speak are people that are profiles in resilience, people that ought to be our heroes instead of what we see on the media every day.
I agree with you 100%. And let me take this time right now, because you just reminded me, I want to give a website out that you are spearheading that is yours. It is, and we will put it up. What we do every day, General, is we write an article, and my website gets anywhere from 10 to 20 million page views per month. So you'll get your share of folks. ResilienceGodstyle.com. That's ResilienceGodstyle.com. And as I was saying with my website, we'll write an article about this interview, and we'll put a link to that, and I'll put other stuff up on my Facebook, which has over 1 million people, and we'll push some people your way, not only because you're giving us your time today, but because it's the right thing to do, and I believe in what you're doing. I have one more question before Harlan jumps in with his interrogation, if you will. Real quickly, I'm asking you this again. Everything I'm asking you is two-part question. I ask you from you having your general's hat on, and then I just ask you from just being an American. How would you rate President Trump's job so far as the President of the United States?
Well, really from both angles, but as Commander-in-Chief from a military perspective, I think he's been superb, as for many reasons I've mentioned. From a citizen of the United States, from one of we the people, I likewise think, I say that leaders ought to be selfless public servants, guardians of truth, and principled collaborators for change. And I think President Trump meets the mark in every regard. He's been selfless. You can't find a president that has worked harder than President Trump has. You can't find a president of history that has given his salary to a good cause instead of taking it for himself. So he's been a selfless public servant. He's been a guardian of truth. The good news about President Trump, some people don't like it, but I like it. He said, what you see is what you get. He's a truth teller. He says it like he feels it, like he thinks it. He doesn't try to play political games. And then thirdly, principled collaborator for change. He understands the art of the deal, and as a result, I think he's powerful in terms of making progress in government that politicians for decades have not made progress on things, tough things like healthcare reform. I think he's going to get there. On tax reform, I think he's going to get there. I have trust and confidence in him. The second thing I would mention, Dennis, is that you look at a leader by the people he puts around him. I can't think over history of a more strong foreign policy team. Just think of the UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, who stared down the Russian ambassador. Think of our Secretary of State with Vladimir Putin today. Think of our Secretary of Defense. Think of our Attorney General, who was on the border yesterday proclaiming respect for the rule of law. You just look at all of this, and I think we're in a good place. Clearly, we're fighting an adverse media. Clearly, we're fighting a lot of a perfect storm, if you will, nationally and internationally that he inherited. But I'm very pleased with his first 90-plus days.
All right, General, I'm going to hand it over to Harlan now, but I just want to say two last things before we do. Number one, for the people who are out there listening, our crowd now is starting to get to its height. We are interviewing General Bob Dees, who has a long history of military expertise, and you can learn more about him and what he is spearheading for the men and women of the military and veterans at resiliencegodstyle.com. That's resiliencegodstyle.com. And I would be remiss, General, if I did not, I'm going to be back with you. Harlan's going to take it over for a little bit here. I would be remiss if I did not tell you, as I'm looking at the comments that are coming through our Facebook page right now, everybody saying to you, thank you for your service. For what you've done for this country. And I've already said it to you a few times. I'm going to say it to you again. Thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do for the United States of America. All right, Harlan's going to hit you with some questions here.
Well, General, the first thing that I wanted to bring up was actually a little bit of breaking news. We know that President Vladimir Putin was meeting with Rex Tillerson, but they've issued a statement where Vladimir Putin has said that one could say that the level of trust on a working level, especially on the military level, has not improved under the Trump administration. Rather, it has deteriorated since Obama left office. And so he seems to be taking a political shot at President Donald Trump. What if we're trying to play, armchair psychologist here? What is Vladimir Putin doing? Like, what's his play here vis-a-vis President Trump? I mean, is this an attempt to help President Trump by putting more distance between the two of them? Or is there some other game at play?
Well, I don't think it's altruistic motives on Putin's part. I don't think he's trying to help President Trump. Mm-hmm. I think Putin is an intelligence professional who is constantly assessing the balance of power. And the reality is that he now has a different assessment of the United States and of their commitment to say what they mean and mean what they say. If you look at Putin's geopolitical situation, I think he's overreached significantly. He's gotten involved in the Middle East, and now he has a United States that has said no further, buck stops here. We're going to honor this red line. He's been trying to be aggressive in Libya as a way to get a Russian presence on the soft belly of NATO. And he's tried to unravel NATO in many ways. And then you have Crimea and the Ukraine, as you appreciate, and many other things. Just look at the Russian incursions into the Arctic region of recent, and they've been very aggressive. And in all of that, one, he doesn't have the economy to back it up, and now he's starting to lose, I think, the world opinion to back up his adventurism, and he's overextended, and I think he's just playing a little bit of a desperate game, trying to figure out how to retrench in some areas without losing face.
It's interesting you say that.
Going on.
Because it does appear that he's already retreated just in the last 12 hours. I mean, we mentioned at the top of the show that President Putin said yesterday that he would not meet with Rex Tillerson. Now today he's meeting with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He looks like he's all over the place. I mean, this is a guy that otherwise is very composed, he's very reserved. Is he in a little bit of a state of panic? I mean, is he concerned about how he is starting to be perceived at home? I ask this question because I think that this is pretty vital to how he continues to project himself abroad. If he becomes less popular and less stable of a leader in Russia, it may change his calculus on the world stage.
I couldn't agree more, Harlan. I think you're right. I think Dennis's assessment earlier that Putin is a fake tough guy is valid. And I don't know if he's panicking now, but he's certainly struggling. He's certainly trying to beat a retreat from some of these places where he's overextended. And I think he recognizes he's vulnerable. Well, and if he continues along the path of offending the world community, particularly the Western, NATO, United States, others, he's going to suffer further economic damage, and he's just not going to be able to sustain the charade that he has going on at present.
General, let's paint a
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
General, let's paint a picture of what's happening in North Korea.
Wait, because I do have a Russian question. I knew you were going to go there.
Okay.
I do have I have a question about Russia, General Dees, and some of my New Yorker is going to come out in me right now. So you don't have to bring yourself down to the gutter like I'm about to. But I mean, if you and I are sitting, if I were the president of the United States, and you were in there and the doors were closed and nobody else was listening, this is how I would ask you. I'd say, General, sit down for a second, will you please? And you say, yeah, sure, Mr. President. I'd say, just tell me point blank, can we kick Russia's ass off the map if we had to?
And the answer I would give him is yes, but we need to work smart and not hard. We don't need to get into a massive land war or a massive this or massive that. America's technological superiority lies with precision, lies with a rapid decision-making cycle, agility, such as you saw with the strike into Syria. So the answer is yes, but it wouldn't be on the basis of numbers. It would be on the basis of superior training and technology. And so we need to be very wise about how and when we engage Russia, recognizing they still are a nuclear presence. They have been modernizing, they have been increasing their nuclear arsenal at the same time that we, under President Obama, have been decreasing it, and that it has been decaying further. The nuclear arsenal is not static. It needs constant maintenance and upgrade. So the answer, Mr. President, is yes, but we need to pick our time and place very carefully, and we need to use our advantages and not go toe-to-toe.
Yes, and so my follow-up to you, General, would be good, because I really don't want to go to war ever, but I like to know what I'm going in against. And so I think that, because I try to get into the mind of Trump. And so if Trump knows that he can, if he had to, God forbid, physically beat Russia down, then that gives him so much as far as I'm concerned, and again, not from a military mind, just from a business, a tactical, sort of how am I going to play this mind? I know that I've got him. And if I've got him, I don't want to strangulate him. I don't want to, I would rather be, this is why I used yesterday with Dick Morris, I used the term tough love. And I think this applies here. And I think Trump comes from the same cut, because we're pretty much from the same place. Tough love to me is, if I know I got to brawl this guy, I want to know if I can't win. If I can't win, I need to know. You just told me if I got to brawl this guy, I'm going to beat him. Now I'm going to give him the love. But the love ain't going to come easy. The love is going to say, listen, Vladimir, I'd rather do things with you, man. Let's build things together. Let's do things together. Let's try to figure out how it is that we can be friends before it is we are foes. And I think that if he sends that kind of message out to Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin knows that he could get his buttocks kicked, then he would be more apt to say, you know what, you're right. Let's try to do something with America. Now, he's saving his face, I think, with this tough guy routine that went on for 12 hours or whatever it may be. But ultimately, now that we know what you're saying in the back room and we know what Putin knows, now I understand a little bit more why it is. I mean, that fake tough guy thing is coming out. But also, General, it has to come out. He's got to do a little bit of a tap dance for his own people, no?
Certainly. Yeah, it certainly does. It reminds me of a schoolyard fight. First the two fighters face off, and then people start to crowd around behind each one. And behind us, we might have NATO, and we might have other allies, and we might have economic power. And behind Putin, you might see Iran line up, and Syria line up, and some other thugs, North Korea even line up behind Putin on that side. And those two fighters will assess, and either they'll decide to shake hands because one of them blinks and he recognizes I don't have the muster to do this, or they duke it out. And I think Putin is in that situation where he's not only looking at us, but he's looking at the world community that's starting to strengthen behind us. And he's saying, I don't have what it takes to play hardball here. I got to play softball. I got to try to finesse this, and I got to try to save faith with my own people. So I think you're all over it, Dennis.
Thank you.
General, so let's paint a picture of what has transpired in North Korea. We have a crazy person leading the North Koreans, who has the benefit of significant military capability relative to this country's size and economic output. I mean, they have been working on this nuclear program for a couple of decades. They've been working on delivery mechanisms that could threaten the U.S. homeland through ICBMs. They're developing that. And he's flexed his muscles. And Trump responded by deploying Carrier Strike Group 1, including the USS Carl Vinson, he's repositioned it from Singapore to near North Korea, which includes a cruiser and 5 or 6 destroyers. This is like a small armada. But then
nuclear submarines.
Nuclear submarines, yes. But at the same time, we've seen additional escalation beyond just the North Koreans and the United States. We've seen that the Chinese have repositioned, or they deployed 150,000 troops to their border with North Korea in the event that there is a strike, and the Chinese army would be used on the ground there to handle refugees that would attempt to flood over the border there with North Korea. But we've also seen in just the last 24 hours that the Russians have flown 3 nuclear capable bombers towards the Japanese, and the Japanese responded in kind by scrambling fighters to intercept them in international waters. So, it's concerning. It does feel as though, and I'm not trying to paint a pessimistic picture here. I mean, it does feel like there's escalation on all sides here. Is this posturing by all parties involved, or is there a real risk for conflict?
Well, let me take this in pieces.
Okay.
You mentioned the border with China, between China and North Korea, and the 150,000 troops. I think that's important. Just a quick vignette. When I was commander of 2nd Infantry Division, there were North Korean parents selling their children to Chinese merchants for bags of rice. So this puts it in context. When you talk about a potential refugee crisis, the reality is that there would be a huge refugee flow into China because they're fleeing the dark government that is persecuting them at every turn. So the Chinese have a valid concern about that. I don't think it's a hostile force. I think it's simply to protect their border. Mm-hmm. And I think of recent, China over the last 24 hours also has sent an accommodating message to President Trump saying, I'd like to work with you. President Xi has said, we'd like to work with you on a peaceful solution to North Korean denuclearization. I think that's positive. I think that, again, is a response from President Xi to President Trump's show of strength in Syria and beyond, and this recent visit also, where he took a measure of President Trump's commitment. So I think from China's part, I don't see any of that as overly hostile towards the Korean situation. Russia, I can't interpret their actions. I would offer that it's probably just posturing. But let's get to North Korea proper. North Korea proper is a very difficult scenario. The attacks of North Korea to stand down their nuclear capability, to destroy it, are graduate level work compared to some of the things that would be required in Syria or other places. In North Korea, they've got first the largest field artillery army in the world. North Korea can place 100,000 rounds of artillery on Seoul, Korea, roughly 12 plus million people, within the first 6 hours of any conventional crisis or conflict. So we've got a conventional artillery problem that we've got to deal with aggressively. There's a counterfire task force in Korea that's on hair trigger notice all the time, particularly now, I'm sure, to try to stand down that North Korean artillery and missile attack against Seoul, Korea within minutes. Secondly, we've got the nuclear aspect of this to consider. On the nuclear side, it has escalated because the North Koreans have escalated their development of ballistic missiles, their development of nuclear capability to go on those ballistic missiles. So it's probably an unprecedented time on the Korean Peninsula. For decades, it's been brinksmanship, as the North Koreans seek to get whatever they might need, whether it be food, whether it be other type of concessions. And now, of recent, they have come to the point should have been stopped a long time ago, but they've come to the point where it's almost at an inflection point where they have the capability and they have the intent, and so they are even more dangerous than before under this precarious, illogical leader, Kim Jong-un.
So what exactly is going to happen? I mean, I'm asking, if you were advising President Donald Trump, what's the course of action from here on out? I mean, do we intervene in North Korea before they're capable of deploying a nuclear warhead that they could put on top of an ICBM? Or do we continue to sit on the sidelines as we did during the Obama administration and hope that, you know, we can strangle them through economic means? And that's never been proven to work.
Right. Well, first, we have an unprecedented entree from China, and that's developed over, ever since the visit here to Mar-a-Lago. So we've got to see what that holds in the cards for the next
and you're talking
week
about
or so.
You're talking about the Chinese cutting off the coal supply to they're no longer purchasing coal from North Korea. They're going to purchase it from the United States instead.
Well, that's one element of it. I'm talking about the larger entree from President Xi to President Trump over the last 24 hours that said, I want to work with you, peaceful solutions. Let's figure out what it takes to denuclearize. So I'd say President Trump and his foreign policy team, his security team, ought to go right at that. They ought to take Xi at his word and say, okay, what do you mean? What does it look like? When are we going to do it? Let's do it now rather than later. There has to have a sense of urgency about it. And then secondly, as always, but now with greater stakes involved, we've got to be prepared to make North Korea's day on a second's notice. And that might be conventionally, that might be nuclear. I hate to say it, but America has tactical nuclear capability that we probably will need to exercise if we get a short warning that North Korea is going to launch hostile nuclear weapons towards American territory or their allies. And so we need to be prepared to do that. Now, clearly, that's a very serious decision. I would not advocate first use, but I would advocate preemptive use in an exigency where they're getting ready to do it. And we've got the intel to tell us that. So we got to be prepared. And then thirdly, peace through strength. The carrier task force there in the region certainly sends a loud message, not necessarily to Kim Jong-un, but all the other allies and to China. And that's how we need to try to constrain this.
General, I want to change gears a little bit here before I dive into Syria with you. I want to give my audience a chance to have their voice heard and go directly to you. I have a couple of questions here, if you could answer them.
Of course.
Thank you. First one comes in from Laura. She wants to know, what do you believe is the #1 threat to the safety of the United States?
Right. Well, Laura, good question. I get asked this a lot, and I thought about it for today. I think it has to be North Korea is the #1 near-term threat. North Korea could create a huge humanitarian disaster in just a few moments, and we're going to have to stand that down. We've discussed that. I think you've got the Russia, China, etc., Syria, ISIS. We clearly need to stand down ISIS, but ISIS is representative of the global jihadist movement. That's probably the next thing I would list because it's insidious. It's both inside of our national boundaries and it's external to our national boundaries. And then I'll take something that is a bit off the wall perhaps, but it would be cyber. I think recently, Dennis and Harlan, you discussed the EMP threat and so forth. In my mind, there's an equally serious threat of cyber overall. Cyber can make our day commercially and from a national security perspective on the defense side. Cyber is a very real threat. We as a nation have not developed the cyber hygiene from our cradle to grave that allows Americans to operate safely in the infosphere. We've got to develop that. It's a serious crisis, whether they're targeting Anthem insurance databases or Target databases or the Office of Military Personnel that stole my security records along with hundreds of thousands of others. It is a very serious issue, and it can stand down our economy. It can stand down many of our other capabilities, to include the electric grid, as we were discussing, as well as EMP threat. So that's very serious. We've got to keep our eye on that ball.
It's funny, I had 4 questions. You knocked out 3 of them with that one answer.
That's amazing.
I had Michael asking about cyber warfare. I had Andrea asking about EMP. So I'll go to Bruce.
Well, I can dive further into cyber warfare if you're interested.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you what, on a serious note, yes, because I always, and again, you know what, I would prefer, if I'm wrong here, I want you to tell me I'm wrong.
Okay.
I always bring up cyber warfare, and one of the reasons being is because before I got into media, General, I had a computer company, hundreds of employees, locations all over the country. And the one thing that I'm very concerned about cyber attacks. And I think that America, you know, people, when they think of terrorism, automatically it is a building falling down, or a car blowing up, or some kind of fiery ball in the sky. But terrorism can come at the keyboard. And if there's one place where America is on equal footing, and this may be where I'm wrong, so I want you to tell me if I am, where America is on equal footing with Iran and North Korea and Russia and whoever it is, bad actors around the world, is when it comes to the keyboard. I mean, you know, there are no tanks, there are no weaponries in that thing. It comes to cyber. And I remember being with Congressman Peter King. I interviewed him for a movie I did, and he's on all those intelligence committees. And he said to me, Dennis, I'm telling you, there is not a day when China does not try to tap into our security systems. So A, is that true? And B, are we on equal playing field? I mean, I asked you about the $54 billion. I was hoping that you would say a little bit more about cyber warfare.
Right. Well, I'd say it's mixed. We have offensive capabilities that are the best in the world, and those are generally highly classified. I won't discuss that in detail. We also have defensive capabilities. Our defensive capabilities are not the best in the world. We need to develop new methodologies for encrypting data, for transmitting data, for securing databases, for all these levels of security. And the problem is, we are subject to witting insiders sometimes and unwitting insiders. You know, John Podesta's password was password. That's an unwitting insider that helped people intrude in their system and export things out. So you've got the offensive, defensive, you've got the problem with insiders, and then you've got the problem with outsiders. Yes, there are cyber nation states such as China, such as Russia, that devote 10, 20, 100 times the resources to cyber that we do in the United States. And they target not just our national security establishment. The Pentagon has thousands of intrusion attempts every day, but also our economy, our educational systems, our private citizens, to just remove our security in a secure internet. So we've got that, but we also, in addition to these nation state actors, we have the challenge of non-nation states. We have the challenge of cyber thieves, cyber thugs, cyber adventurers that just do it for the fun of it, that are hobbyists. And you look at this, I worked for a short time for Microsoft. And when I went into Microsoft, they have what's called a vulnerability window. And if I'm recalling roughly, it was like 184 days that it took bad guys to look at a patch that Microsoft had put on the street and then reverse engineer it and exploit that patch. So Microsoft could put out a warning, send it out to corporations, they would install the patch, everybody would be in pretty good shape because the bad guys hadn't been able to figure out how to reverse engineer it yet. In the 2 years that I was at Microsoft, there were all these types of automated hacking tools that were developed. So the vulnerability window was less than 4 days when I left. For Microsoft to announce a vulnerability, put it out, and expect corporations, IT system administrators, et cetera, across the United States and the world to install the proper patches before the bad guys in 4 days reverse engineer it is a bridge too far. It's a cat and mouse game, and that's always underway. So there's people that both on the private side and then on the nation state side that are always at us, and we need to have disruptive technologies that create new forms of cybersecurity that we've never experienced before. and we need that now.
All right, so I want to change gears to our last topic here to talk about Syria. But what I want to do also before we do that, because we always have people coming in and out the entire time, is I want to give one more time your website. We are interviewing right now General Robert Dees. I met him about a year and a half ago. I was consulting for Dr. Ben Carson. The general was Dr. Carson's chairman. We sat down together next to for each other for lunch, and automatically I liked him. He handed me his business card, and I used to interview him a few times when I had the Newsmax show. He has an unbelievably great website that you have to go check out. It's called resiliencegodstyle.com. He's spearheading things for veterans and for military, and as you can just tell from sitting here for a half hour listening to the man speak, he knows what he's talking about, and he is an encyclopedia of information. I mean, Harlan, between having him today, having Dick Morris yesterday, having Michael Cutler, I mean, these guys are coming here. They've got the best stuff going on. All right, so let's go into Syria, General.
Dennis, may I just mention one thing? On that website, I have 3 books. One is Resilient Warriors, one is Resilient Leaders, and one is Resilient Nations. That last book talks about how America bounces back. What are the elements of American exceptionalism that we perhaps have lost that we need to regain? And then how do we bounce back to achieve life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? So that one I'm passionate about, and I unashamedly recommend that to your viewers as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, General, I'm a man of my word, and I never ask for something and not give something back in return. So I will, if it's okay with you, ask you to come back maybe in another 2 weeks, a week and a half, whatever it may be. We come back, we talk about whatever our current events are with these things taking place in Syria, North Korea, et cetera, so forth, and we space out some time, maybe 10, 15 minutes for you to talk some more about that book, and we'll get people on this side. I have very, very, very loyal followers who help the people who help me and who help the people who help America. And you have done both. So I'm sure that we'll see some book sales there. So, hey, if you have some extra money in your pocket, spend it wisely and spend it on the General's book. I tell you what, General, I will be going and buying your book, and I will read it. So this way I could talk to you intelligently about it the next time we are together. Let me ask you.
I'll send you one, my friend. Thanks.
I appreciate it. I'll buy it. I don't want anything for free. You earned your you earned your right to sell me your book, and I will buy it. That said, General, if I were to measure the emails that I receive on a daily basis and all the comments, it goes into the thousands. And as I always say, there's always this sort of recurring theme. And the theme of the week, if you will, is twofold. And I want to bring both of those out to you and give you the stage to basically reply to both. One is a huge concern from Trump supporters who are starting to get concerned in many different levels. They are concerned about the idea that maybe Steve Bannon won't be around anymore. And, Dick Morris made reference to this yesterday, that, that the establishment would love nothing more than to see Bannon go away, because that will be the establishment's way of sneaking themselves into the White House. But they're also very concerned about the actions taken in Syria. They're saying, wait a second, this president said Americans first, America first. We weren't going to get in that sort of situation. And presto, here we are. I'm concerned that he's leading us down a path of war, and nobody wants war. That's number one. The second question I have for you is, if that does happen, if Assad does continue with the chemical weapons, because maybe Russia, maybe Putin isn't tough guy enough to come at us straight out, but he can do it through proxy. He could do it through sneaky ways. I mean, he's meeting on Friday with Iran and with Syria, and I wouldn't be surprised if he uses Syria as a way to egg us on. And so if that does happen again, if the chemical weapons are used again and Trump continues to retaliate, and we do get into a situation where we feel as if we need to remove Assad, sir, doesn't that create another Iraq where we're taking out one bad guy and then we're going to replace it with more, maybe, let's say, ISIS?
Yeah, well, good questions, Dennis. Let me drive into both of those. On the Trump war phenomenon. His supporters, you say, are concerned that he's heading us into war. I think people need to recognize that a surgical strike in Syria in response to use of chemical weapons is not the precursor for war. It's not an incremental approach that leads to deeper and deeper involvement necessarily. And I think President Trump has said that. The Secretary of Defense said that in press conference yesterday. It's a surgical strike for a specific situation in Syria to deter them from further chemical use. I think if Assad decides to continue on and use chemicals or barrel bombs or whatever, I think we have other surgical ways to make it hurt more and more. Certainly on the economic side and all that, yes, but on the military side, one of the recommended courses of action that President Trump did not take, that his supporters should be assured about, is that he took a limited approach. We could have gone after the totality of Assad's air force. To do that, however, would increase risk to American forces, would expose us to the Russian air defense systems in the area, and would have had higher risk of U.S. casualties and complicating circumstances. So President Trump, with his outstanding national security team, I think had a very good first outing with the deterring Assad. And I think it was well done, professionally executed, and it's limited. And I don't think anybody that understands how these things work should assume that this represents just the foot in the toe in the water that will soon become a massive conflagration in the Middle East. That's not what I'm seeing. Related to Bannon, I think, yes, Steve Bannon has had an impact on Donald Trump and on policy and so forth. But I think people are underselling President Trump to think that the departure of any one person would change Donald Trump's very strong and considerable intellect and growing knowledge of foreign policy. I just don't think that Donald Trump is a yes man. He's not this fake bully. He's a person that believes what he says and says what he believes and is going to make red lines stick. He will deal from strength. He's a New York street fighter in Dennis's terms, and he's going to deal that way, and that's good for our country. So I don't see that problem. You can follow up if you want to, Dennis, before I jump into this other thing with Assad.
No. You know what? Yes, let me do one thing. And I apologize for asking you this question, but I'm reading
Sure.
the things that are going through the Facebook page. And I'm a guy who believes that everybody should have a voice, even if I don't agree with what they're saying.
Sure.
Some of the messages coming through that it's a false flag, that Assad really didn't put chemicals onto his own people. Why would he do that? Can you address that, please?
Well, I don't think it's a false flag. I think it's a true flag. One, he's done it before. We've seen him do this before, and they say you fall the way you lean. He's been leaning this direction in many of his past actions, so it's totally plausible from that perspective. Secondly, United States intelligence is second to none, and so whether you look at satellite and image intelligence, signal intelligence, human intelligence, you go through all the INTs, the intelligence types, and the United States does seldom or never acts on one single form of intelligence. So they've corroborated the validity of this many times over with all those different types of intelligence. And when they say high confidence, that means high confidence. That's, very little possibility that that Assad was not the one that used it. So from past performance, from current intelligence, I think it's guilty as charged, and that's why President Trump was able to act so decisively upon this particular event.
All right, and as far as removing Assad from his regime, the Assad regime, ridding of them, what is the risk there?
Well, I think it's always risky when we make it a stated objective to depose a leader of any country regarding how despotic he is. Now, eventually, it comes to a point where we may have to do it, and we may just have to do it unilaterally. But the words I've been hearing from our administration, as I read between the lines, Ambassador Haley and Secretary of State have both alluded to the fact that he needs to go, but they haven't said, and the United States are going to be the ones that are going to specifically take him out or whatever. They've said with the growing dissent of his actions on the world stage, there's going to be growing pressure that Assad be deposed. You've got internal pressure and you've got external pressure, and the United States is only one of a growing number of voices. And hopefully, Ambassador Haley and the United Nations will instill a little backbone in the rest of the countries there that are normal U.S. allies to voice the same thing and provide increasing pressure on Syria and on Russia to get such a despotic leader out of the way.
Well, General, what are the options on the table for deposing a leader like Assad? And I think in many ways this is relevant for deposing a leader like Kim Jong-un as well. I mean, we're not going to put, I hate this term, but we're boots on the ground. We're not going to put boots on the ground. We're not going to invade the country and cut him off at the head. What are our options? I mean, even if we were to have full participation of the international community.
Well, what I was hearing when you said full participation of the international community, that would imply a more measured approach. When you look at strict options, apart from the wisdom of executing any of these options, yes, you could go in and you could physically take him down. You could actually send U.S. Special Operations Forces to take him down. You could use indirect means, such as a very precise attack on his command and control capabilities and on the leader himself. Again, I'm not advising these things. I'm just saying, what are the options?
Right.
And he knows that these are options as well. And then you could work through indigenous forces. We've been doing that to some degree, but you could support those in a more specific way towards actually deposing the existing leader, along with other allies. And then the last one would be the slow pressure cooker. Increasingly greater restrictions, blockade, air corridors, and things to further curtail his capabilities. And obviously, the Russians are a factor in all this. I don't pretend to have those answers, but I do think we have options, and we need to carefully go through those. And I would join the Trump supporters that President Trump did not campaign on a war platform, nor do I think he's inclined in that way. And I think his very capable national security team has the same inclination. Dennis, one thing you would appreciate, the people that want peace the most are the ones that have to fight war. So America's military, some would look at them as warmongers. They are highly professional. They do not want war, and that's why they need to be strong. But if necessary, they will fight and win if the president so directs them.
No question there, General. General, we're pretty much running out of time at this point. So first of all, let me one more time read out your website for people. It is resiliencegodstyle.com. General Bob Dees, that's his website. Please give it a visit. He's got 3 books on there. If you can, please go in there and buy all 3, or at least buy one of them. We are going to have the General back again, because if I don't have you back again, General, I know I will lose half my crowd. They will lose complete respect for me. Your insight and your intelligence and your love of country is just immeasurable. I appreciate it in such a huge way, and I can't say thank you enough. So with that being said, General, we're going to jump off here now with you, and then Harlan and I are just going to close a few things out. And again, I want to say on behalf of all my audience.
Great to be with you, Dennis and Harlan.
Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you so much. All right, Tim, disconnect that feed if you can. All right, Harlan, we're going to wind this up. I mean, the General is just phenomenal with the...
Absolutely. I mean, a wealth of experience and information. You talk about about this all the time when you were running for, or when you were considering running for office. all of the information that you were able to obtain over that period of time. It was like a crash course. And, doing this show just this week, I feel like not only have I had a crash course, but everybody that's watching this has learned so much. But look, we do live in scary times. And that's why I was asking him about, for instance, if we were going to depose Assad, what are our options? And because I believe a lot of our viewers and a lot of Trump supporters, they want to continue to put America first. They want to balance that with our international obligations to humankind. We don't want to see chemical weapons used on children and women. Right. But we don't, at the same time, we don't want to invade another country.
No,
it's a tough position.
There is a cost of war, both human and financial.
Absolutely.
America is we're war tired, man.
We are.
We want the stuff in the Middle East to stop. We'd rather. That's why I always use the tough love thing. Even when I say the thing to the general about being a guy from New York or whatever, it may come out sounding like I'm picking a fight. I want to have the fight. I want to show that I have stronger muscles than you do. But it's not the case. I mean, I'd rather much be friends with somebody than a foe with somebody. And I think I speak for most of America in that case. But so far, I think President Trump and his team have been handling this as well as anybody could. And when you hear guys like General Dees, who puts country above everything, right? Mm-hmm. He's not going to sit there and just, flower nice comments because it benefits him with President Trump. He's going to be out there. He's going to tell you how he feels, and that's why I love it. When you talk about the people we've had on this week, a lot of times people ask me, DML, how do you know so much stuff? Well, I'll tell you what, because I've been surrounded with these kind of people. Yeah. Just look at this week. We have a general, right? A top general from the United States Army. We have John Rowland, one of the most respected long-term guys in the news business, who built a reputation for asking hard-hitting questions.
Second to none.
It's second to none. I mean, second to none. You got Dick Morris, who many will consider being one of the smartest political minds. And last week, we had, INS agent Michael Cutler on as a guest, not in this format. Wait until we have him on in this format where he speaks for an hour. He's the smartest guy in immigration in the country. So, I mean, that sort of thing there, I mean, the wealth of information is just unbelievable. And I want to say thank you to everybody for the great questions. I mean, I had a lot come in. I can't get to all of them, obviously, and there were so many things we wanted to ask the general. We're going to wrap it up at this point because we're here for an hour. Let me just give you a couple of house cleaning things that you need to know about. Last night, we did a abbreviated show of the truth. It was 17 minutes long. We watched the numbers, and so tonight, believe it or not, we're even going to go for a shorter. We're going to do a little 8:30 at 8:30, meaning 8 minutes and 30 seconds at 8:30. And we're trying a bunch of different things here. We're trying to see how long people stay on and watch, where it is that they're dropping off, what do they seem to like the best. So we're trying to figure out what the perfect medicine is here for the perfect, to make it so this way you feel as if the mainstream media has somebody or something competing against it in a way where you're getting information that you want to know, that you need to know. And so we're going to keep on trying. There's other things that we do to test what this is like. First of all is, and I don't mean to speak down to anybody, but you have a responsibility. Today there was 2,600 people on here at some point. There should be 2,600 shares. And if there's not 2,600 shares, he's doing his job, I'm doing my job. We need you to do your job. Your job is to share this stuff. If you don't share it, you know what? It stays within us. And that means 2,602 people get the, 2,603 people have the information. I should say 2,604 have the information, the general being in there. You have to share it. The more you share it, the more you fight back against Facebook, the more you fight back against the mainstream media. We've had this conversation a gazillion times, and I'm seeing the share numbers drop. So the number of people coming in is staying the same, and obviously that's limited because Facebook just limits the stuff. There's nothing you could do about it. I have more emails from people telling me I can't get your feed. Well, share it. They can't stop you from sharing. But as our numbers are staying, I'm watching this sharing drop. Meanwhile, the information we're giving you, I think, is the best that we've ever given and anything that we've done. This sort of format, the thing that I like about this sort of format, Harlan, and there's no two guys who know it better than he and I. He's a guest all the time on CNN and Fox. You go in there, you spend 45 minutes getting your makeup done, you spend an hour getting there, and you go in there and you're lucky if you've got 90 seconds to say something, you get cut off by somebody who's running the show, right? All right, as a host of a show who's always up against the clock in a commercial break, I know that I've got to keep things condensed, and out of the 7 questions I had written down, I'm going to get to 2. The great thing here is that in this format, we let him speak, we don't cut him off. If it sounds like, we're trying to cut him off or we're going, it's not. It's because the feed is slow, and we thought, like one time I thought he stopped speaking,
Yes.
and I went to go ask a question and he wasn't, and I stopped. Especially I'm talking to a general, you know what I mean?
Of course.
So to that extent, we're allowing people to come on here and just talk freely. So this is the sort of information, if you really have people who want to know, this is what has to be shared. And at nighttime, you have to share that stuff. So we're trying to cut it down so this way it's more shareable. And that's that. So we're going to do that, and it's going to be tonight. Tonight is going to be an extension, but different than what it is that we did here today. We're actually going to give you the numbers about how bad the military is down, how it's been shrunk. And to me, there were many things he said today, but the one thing that jumped out at me most is that I asked him, am I right in saying that the military is supposed to be built to the extent of being able to fight 2 wars at one time? Yes. Right now, if we were to have 2 conflicts at one time, would we be able to defend ourselves correctly? And he said, no. I mean, to me, that jumped out.
Yep.
So we're going to be talking about the numbers behind that tonight. Scarlett's doing a whole report on that right now. Harlan is going to do a report tonight about how it is that how much our military members make versus what people make in other agencies in the government. It's going to blow your mind. And then I'm going to give you my final words on what I think it is that America needs to do in order to be able to enhance its military and enhance the image of the military from around the world. So 8 minutes and 30 seconds. It's going to be powerful. I hope you share it. That said, any other closing remarks?
That's it. We'll see you tonight.
That's it. We'll see you tonight, 8:30 at 8:30. Until then, God bless you. God bless our troops. God bless the United States, the President of the United States, and God bless for giving us. God bless General Dees. What an all-star, a total all-star. All right. I want to thank him for joining us, and you too. Adios, amigos.